Okay, welcome this afternoon to our Board of County Commissioners of Utah County meeting. And we have always started with a prayer, reading, or thought, and then followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. We look to the audience to see if anybody would like to participate with us in either offering a prayer, reading, or thought, or leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Are there any volunteers? Was it the prayer? Okay. Anybody would like to lead us in the pledge? All right, thank you. Come on up.
Father in heaven, we are grateful to live in a country where we get to elect our leaders and be governed by representation. We are grateful for this nation and the freedoms that it espouses and the principles that it was built on. We ask that those principles might ring in our minds and hearts today as we go through the exercise of governing, and especially today as we work on adopting a budget that will have impact across our county. We are grateful, Father, for the freedoms that we enjoy. We are mindful of this wonderful state that we live in, the providence that we're blessed with. We ask that a spirit of peace will be with us, and that we can remember the golden rule in all that we do. This we pray for in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Come on up.
I'd like to introduce to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Just for the record, could I get your name? Because that we usually put that down.
James Williams.
James Williams, thank you. Now you're in the record, if you wanted to. All right, thank you for that and for participating in that. As you'll see, we have a number of public hearings. We'll go through them one by one. And we'll just start with, as they're listed, number one, if we could open that public hearing up. Number one is a public hearing to consider vacating a portion of 3200 West between River Lane and Spanish Fork River near the Palmyra area of Utah County.
Were we going to continue that item? There were people that wanted to speak on it that couldn't be here. Is that the correct item? Or is that confused? That's the work session? Okay, thanks. Just making sure.
Can we get a motion to open up that public hearing?
Yeah, I'll move to open that hearing.
I'll second.
Okay, we got a motion, and a second to open up that public hearing. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passes 3-0. And come on up, and while you're coming on up, the public hearings are just that for us. It's to listen to comment. It's not for debate or conversation, but to listen to what you have to say.
Yeah, I'm just the one that the public hearing's over right on the ground down there. Are you contingent? Are you going to send it to next week, or is that what you said? Or
Oh, no.
Okay.
We need to get your name too, I think.
oh, Charles Betts. Sorry.
Okay, thank you.
We're it's been sitting for 30 days now, so this is the end for the public hearing. What we're proposing is you giving us the deeds and we giving you a leeway, is that what you call it, Richard? An easement going up through there to the river and along the river up to my brother's property, which is about 4188 south. And then from there up, you've already got a road down there. You built that this summer, and it's got a nice run that way. We'd have an easement all the way down, coming down that side of that ditch. We don't want to move the ditch or anything, but to put a road in there, we're going to have to, well, the county will have to put 3 to 4 culverts in there because we water out of that ditch on that side, so we can get over those culverts and up to the river. So we're just proposing that we give you the easement to go up through there and return for the deeds to that. That's all I have. Any questions?
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm Dennis Wilson. I represent LD3, who has property to the north and east of that. And I just wanted to comment to just make sure that it's considered that I think he already mentioned that they didn't want to move the ditch, but the ditch supplies our water for our property. So I just want to make sure that that will still be available for us. So I'm still able to get my water out of the water to my property for that. So,
Right, okay.
Thank you.
And so when we come to that item, which I believe is item 18 on our agenda, there probably will be an opportunity for you there to have Richard answer that question.
Okay.
Right now, we're just listening to public comment.
I'll wait
Okay.
until then. Thanks.
Thank you.
I'm Kyle Bateman, so you might put this off too again because this is a little bit of a question, but I own property on the west side of the river and just wanted to make clear, it's my understanding this doesn't affect anything on the west or south side of the river, that this is only on the east side. So it'd be nice to have a clarification on that in the record.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
You're not going to answer this, are you?
I can give you some clarification now, or we do it.
Let's do it when we get to the, just keep making notes. All right. Any other public comment on that? All right, seeing none, then a motion to close that public hearing.
I'll move that we close public hearing item number 1.
And I'll second that motion.
I got a motion and a second to close the public hearing. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passes 3-0. Number 2 is a public hearing to discuss the 2022 budget for the general fund and other budgetary funds of Utah County. We'll need a motion to open up that public hearing.
Also motion.
I'll
So
second.
move.
I got a motion and a second to open up the public hearing as stated. Number 2, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Now we're open now for the public, and we're sitting here ready to listen. Public hearing. Any comments? I don't see any online either. Okay, a motion to close that.
So move.
I'll second that motion.
Got a motion and a second to close the public hearing. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passes 3-0. Number 3 is to a public hearing to consider changing the existing salaries of the county officers of Utah County. We have a motion to open that up, that public hearing.
I'll make a motion that we open agenda item 3.
I'll
Public
second
hearing,
that motion.
Item 3.
I got a motion and a second to open up the public hearing as stated in number 3. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are now open to receive comment. Seeing none, no one's jumping up quick, so I'm assuming there's none there, and I don't see any online.
Okay, I'll
Motion to
move
adjourn.
to close public comment.
I second the motion.
Get a motion and a second to close the public hearing. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, we're closed from the public hearing. Okay, now if you look at our agenda, now we'll go through a process of building our agenda. You'll notice on our paperwork that the consent agenda has nothing underneath it. We will attempt, I assume, to fill the consent agenda, which means that if it's moved to a consent agenda, it'll either be ratified, approved, or adopted, or whatever is said in the line items. And those that we hold, so as we go down through the numbers, a commissioner can just say, I'd like to hold that number for consideration and more discussion. We'll have to vote on those. They'll stay on our regular agenda. Everything else will be moved to consent. So with that, let's start with items number 1 through 10. Are there any items, commissioners, that you'd like to hold, to leave on our regular agenda?
9 and 10 look like duplicates to me. Did I miss something on that, or?
They look like they're identical to me.
They are. This is Rob Moore. I talked to Ben Van Noy. Number 10 is a duplicate of number 9, so you can strike number 10.
This is strike 10.
Yeah, so let's strike 10.
Yep. Okay, we will leave it on consent to strike 10.
And just to note, the funds is coming from the school district to the county health department.
Right. Correct.
Okay?
Okay, now let's move to items number 11 through
I-
20.
Item number 13, we can strike. They are not ready for that one yet, and they'll put it on the agenda when all the details are there.
Okay, we've had that multiple times, so
Yep.
it's good to.
So let's just strike it, and then they can re-add it
I'm
when.
fine with that. You
fine with that, yes.
Okay, we'll just leave that on consent to strike,
Yep.
and then we'll hold number 18.
17, I'm not clear which building we're referring to.
Okay, you want to hold number 17?
Yes, just for a brief
Okay,
review
we'll
what
hold
that
number
is.
17
Yes.
to leave it on our regular agenda. Okay, that was through 20. Okay, items 21 then through 27.
Okay. Just want to get clarity on number 24.
Hold number 24.
I think we should discuss 26.
Hold 26.
Yeah.
25 is the one with public hearing.
Yeah, we want to hold 25 too. We have people for comment on that one, I think.
Oh, so Richard, I thought that was 18.
That's the tax parcel we want.
So we don't need the 18 then? Okay, so maybe we'll go back and modify then. Hold number 25.
Okay, hold
Are
25.
you okay then with leaving 18 on consent?
Yeah, I'm okay with that. And holding 25.
Holding
yeah.
25. Okay, got mixed up in that, and then holding 27. Okay, and then on our closed meetings, I'm not sure.
So Commissioner Rob Moore, County Attorney's Office, if you could set 28 and also set 29 for 29, please set it for 4 o'clock today.
4 p.m.
We're gonna have it, yeah, we're gonna have some visitors in that one.
Okay,
And then we don't need 30 or 31.
Correct.
Okay.
As far as I know.
so then if we don't need 30 or 31, if their commissioners don't need that one, we'll leave that on consent to strike 30 and 31.
Okay.
And we will hold 28, and we'll hold 29 for 4 p.m. today.
Thank you.
And then also, it's been asked that we strike the work session. The presenter had some conflicts.
Okay.
So if we could strike that one.
Okay.
Okay. Alice,
Okay, we have, we're striking agenda item number 10 and 13, holding 17, 24, 25, 26, and then for the closed meetings, we're holding 28 as stated, 29 at 4 p.m., and then striking 30, 31, and also striking the work session.
okay, and then 27, did you have that as a hold as well?
No, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, any other clarifications? All right, we'll go right to item number 17. Is that the first one? It is.
Richard
ahead,
Nelson,
Richard.
Public Works Director. Commissioner Sakovic, you was asking about which building this is. This is for the North Animal Shelter. There was a vehicle accident there that caused damage to the building, and it caused some glass to be broken, the storefront. So that's what the contract is here with Jones Paint and Glass. And we have received funds from the car insurance company to cover the majority of those costs.
Okay.
What's not covered will be covered by the Special Service District for the animal shelter.
Okay. Where is the North Animal Shelter?
It is located in the Linden area, just
Linden?
north of the old landfill there. It's where North Point Special Service District is.
Ah, okay. All right. I just when it said damaged building, I was just curious what kind of building. And
That's what it is.
I looked around here, didn't see anything terribly done to this building, so.
Nope.
Okay, thanks, Richard. I can make a motion that we adopt agenda item 17 then.
I'll second that motion.
Get a motion and a second to approve item number 17. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, that passes 3-0. Okay, item number 24, authorize a change in the staffing plan to the Health Department to add one full-time career service public health nurse 2 position.
For the health director, my curiosity, is this within the existing budget for 2021? When is this, or is it to begin in 2022?
No, it's to begin in 2021 in the existing staffing plan structure too. We've had turnover and we need an incident commander to serve at the clinic that we have at Provo High School. The individual that was doing that quit and left employment, and so this will be to fill that with grant funds.
Oh, so we're not adding a position, we're just adding a person to the existing position?
I believe it actually is a, we want a nurse to, the person that was, I believe the incident commander there was kind of a billing specialist and quit, and we need a nurse supervisor to better serve as the incident commander out at Provo High School.
So is this out of your existing budget for 2021 then?
Yeah, it'll be grant funded to my knowledge. I don't believe it's going to be any increase than what we've already proposed. So a while back, working through HR, we had asked for clinical assistants as well as COVID nurses to be able to be hired, a list of them, and so it would be working within that.
So this
range
is
to
all
my
FEMA
knowledge.
grant, COVID-related FEMA grant funded?
Or grants that we have for COVID response, not through COVID, but through
Other,
through county COVID grants. So any concerns over that?
just if the grants expire, what do you anticipate for the position?
So as a grant funded position, if the grant funds were gone, then as would the COVID need be as well, and the position. So
Okay. So if it's not federal, you could possibly get state later on, or is that what you're thinking of?
and I will be using we won't be using FEMA dollars for the project FEMA dollars for this. We'll be using existing health department COVID grant funds for it that we have for this purpose.
Okay.
So any concerns from any other commissioners? Okay,
And
thank you.
so move that we adopt agenda item 24 then.
Okay, I'll second that motion.
Get a motion and a second to authorize the changes stated number 24 on our agenda. All in favor, say aye.
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 That passes 3-0. Okay, number 25 is to approve and adopt an ordinance vacating a portion of 3200 West between River Lane and Spanish Fork River near the Palmyra area of Utah County. Hopefully you took some good notes.
Sure. I think I can answer the questions that are out there. This is the topic of the first public hearing we had today. Just to give you a little bit of background, 3200 West historically had crossed the Spanish Fork River going north to south. There was a bridge there. There was a section of road about, I'd say probably 300 feet long. Charles, is that about right? Yeah, about that, between the river and where River Lane is now. From what we can tell from the old aerial photos and historic documents, somewhere in the early 1950s, that bridge was removed. I don't know if it was the cause of a flood or if it was removed intentionally. The bridge was taken out and the road was obliterated at that point. As Mr. Betts was doing some work on his property, looking at titles and things like that, it was discovered that the county actually had an underlying deed for this piece of road, which is kind of unusual for a lot of our county roads. And it was one that, as we went back and looked, we couldn't find anywhere where that piece of road had ever been vacated. It's not been a road since the 1950s. It's been part of Mr. Betts and the adjoining owner, Mr. Roberts' fields. The ditch that's there now is approximately somewhere in the center of that old deeded right-of-way. There's no intention of the ditch being relocated or changed. To the one gentleman's question on the ditch being able to irrigate the property, the ditch will remain as is. And then to, let's see, who else asked? Mr. Bateman, it doesn't affect anything on the west side of the river. The road on the west side of the river stays as is. It doesn't affect that at all. So hopefully that gives a little bit of background on it, and can go from there.
So does the ditch, even though it won't be changed now, does it have protection that it will stay there until? I mean, it's not. There's not. Does it have an easement, or what does it have that, that protects it?
I don't believe there's a written easement on it. That could certainly be something we could look at as we're looking at this. It would have a prescriptive easement because of the number of years it's been there.
Right. So it's been there more than 10 years.
Yes.
Okay.
Let me address a couple things real quickly. As for easement, we have to look into that. I think it'd be better to have a written easement because remember, you can't get a prescriptive easement over government property. And so if we own that at the time, that 10-year clock never starts running.
Oh.
Good point. Okay.
And so,
yeah,
so we might
that would be a
better
good
do a written easement on that. Secondly, why don't you discuss what the intention is in a future agenda, putting the quitclaim deeds on?
Yeah, so looking down the road at a future agenda, it wouldn't be on today because we're just looking at the vacation action today. But Mr. Bett's desire is to acquire the portion of the property that would be in his occupation that he has now. So basically the east side of the ditch. Mr. Roberts, who's the other adjacent landowner, has expressed interest in acquiring the part to the west of the ditch. What we would anticipate is creating some quitclaim deeds that would be on a future agenda for the commission to consider. Mr. Bates alluded to it a little bit, that in exchange for that quitclaim deed for that portion of the old roadway, that he would grant a maintenance access easement along the river. That's a benefit to us as we have, especially as we get into flood years. That this past year it didn't apply too much, but in other years when we need to get along and do work along the river, we can get in there with the equipment and do that, and that would be what we'd be proposing at that point in time, is to have an exchange of the quitclaim deed for the old road deed in exchange for a maintenance access easement along the river.
And that would be a good time maybe to look at the other easement too.
Yeah, I think we'd do that all at the same time.
Okay.
Other questions for me?
We'll give a chance for any public comment on it. Okay. Seeing none.
Commissioner, today just all we're doing is looking at potentially vacating the public easement portion of it. We would still own, the county would still own the property, and then, as mentioned, we will deal with that in a subsequent agenda.
Right. Okay.
Make a motion that we adopt agenda item 25.
I'll second that motion.
We got a motion and a second to approve and adopt the ordinance as stated number 25 on our agenda. All in favor say aye.
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 That passes 3-0. Okay, number 26 is to approve and authorize the signing of a resolution approving the 2022 budget for the general fund and other budgetary funds of Utah County. We've already had a public hearing on this, but I do want to give an opportunity for any other public comment. And after the public comment period, since we've had a public hearing already and public comment, then we'll pull this one back up to the bench here for discussion. Okay, seeing none, then we'll pull it back up here to the commissioners for discussion. We've already gone through a process looking at a tentative budget. The clerk auditor's office has put the tentative budget together, which we have and have been going over extensively with their team and looking at different options and forecasts that they have in place. So thank you for that. And now it's our turn as commissioners to look down through the budget and come to areas that we feel comfortable with as we move forward into next year. Maybe to start, unless either one of you wanted to make a comment. No? So there's a couple things as I foresee this. I don't anticipate that, at least I'm wondering, but I don't anticipate that we will actually adopt a final budget today. There's still, from my workings. I was working right up to the last second with the budget officers and others, trying to see where we're at with different areas. But what I would like to see, I would like to see us agree on a number that makes sense for us to increase. And I want to state this: the budget, from my perspective, and I generally feel that the other commissioners, they can speak for themselves, but that we are going to have an increase from our amended budget of 2021. So it's going to be an increase. It's just a matter of what that increase looks like and how much. But nevertheless, it will be an increase. There's no thoughts that I can see anyway of decreasing or holding level on that. And so the question will be, at what level do we feel comfortable looking into the future and projecting revenues, and also holding our thoughts on how we go forward. So there's two ways that we can do this. We can either go through and the first way is we can go through and look at what our revenues look like, and then according to our revenues, adopt a budget, or we can look at the expenses on the expense side and how much we would like to go forward, because we are fortunate, and I think we're fortunate that we have growth that is applicable, here in the county, which is an increase. We have sales tax, which are the two main revenue sources that are increasing, and because of that, we are fortunate enough to say that we can look at increasing our general budget and others to match where we're at. Now, I've been talking a lot about maybe the general fund on this thing, but we also have the A&C and others that are in there too. But if we could, as I'm talking about the general fund, it'd be nice if we could come to a dollar amount of what we think the overall budget should look like. And then my hope is that we take that dollar amount over and above our budgeted amount for 2022, which was a change from the years prior, because in the years prior when we did budgeting, we always went back 2 years to a stable, and this year we held with the budgeted numbers and started there. So it's a whole different thinking and philosophy, which I think the department heads and others appreciated, and I think this will probably be a pattern for us going forward and doing this instead of going back to numbers that are not as relevant. But with that, we do have property taxes, and we look at property taxes, and there is an increase. Our amended budget this year turned out to be $52,171,948. That was the amended. It did come down from because of the tax rate decrease that we had, which was 58.8. So it did come down to the 52,171,948. And then we're projecting, even with growth into next year, the 2022, 56,450,000. And those are, the reason why those are rounded off is those are a little bit on the budget side. We're projecting that. So new growth is something where we're going to pick up about $4 million roughly in property taxes. On the sales tax side, there's a couple in there. There's a local option sales tax, which sometimes gets glossed over, but it still sees an increase in there. And then there's the county option sales tax, and the county option sales tax in the actuals for 2020 was $34,379,525. Our adopted budget at the beginning of last year was $31,900,000. And then the amended budget was $36,500,000, and the proposed on the tentative is $46,200,000. So obviously we can see that there's growth, there's anticipation for sales tax to continue in a good positive way for revenue projections going forward. And then there's various other revenue sources that do come in. That's one way, to on the revenue side to look at it. And then on the expense side, it just depends on how we want to step into this. I say step into this next year, because some of those numbers are projected, and they could materialize. They may materialize. All indicators are saying that they probably will materialize in that direction. But I do want to point out the example of last year, in which we projected on our on our budget, a $31,900,000 for our adopted budget last year, which was down from the actuals of 2020, which is a little unfair because we didn't have the actuals when we went through it. But nevertheless, there was basically, as we were going through it last year, everyone was predicting that we were going to go through on a stable basis and maybe even go down, which did not happen. So that always causes me a little bit of, we predicted here, we didn't go there, now we're predicting here, where are we going to go? There's a little bit of imbalance in there that always brings me into question. On the expense side, I'm not going to go through all the numbers on the expense side because there's a lot there. But and of course, this is open for discussion with the commissioners as we have it up here. I would like to see us get to a number on the expense side that we feel comfortable with stepping into next year, where we walk into next year with our eyes open. And personally, I don't want to budget too far out with the numbers. I'd rather be a little bit more conservative with it, let it prove its model if it's going to prove that way, and then adjust in the year as accordingly. And so for me, I've kind of worked through the budget on this. Again, I don't think that we're going to get to an adoption. And I think that's probably generally felt that way, Commissioner Zakovich.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
felt that way too. And so I think that if we can get to a number where we feel comfortable, then we can have more discussions with department heads as they fill out their requests. That was a long rant, but other thoughts?
For me, I was looking at the original verbalizing direction from me was because we thought we might have a growth of 2% in 2020 because of the COVID crisis and government's reactions to it, shutting businesses down and causing individuals to remain home. But we broke through the ceiling on that level, on that forecast, and we continue, it appears to, so far at least, continue to do that this current year. Given the uncertainties of federal expenditures and how they're addressing post-COVID environment, I'm concerned there might be a economic impact, a negative kind of impact. And so my approach with this was originally, as I verbalized it, that we should look at maybe staying within 2021's budget for all departments, with exceptions addressed separately for departments on specific needs that might need to be addressed. So that's what I was considering as we went through this. And so there are a couple of questions I have, but I wanted to talk to the departments about a little bit more detail with them to ensure that if whatever growth we have, it will be maintained should there be a economic twist that we're not anticipating now based on what has happened these past 2 years. And that's been my concern, is what is happening in the national level will likely affect us here locally. And so in my mind, I'm thinking, what is it that we can do to operate as a county and do effective and exceptional work and have the resources needed for emergencies and unanticipated issues, while at the same time keeping in mind the community that we're supposed to serve, and that is keeping taxes to the minimum so that they can operate should there is an economic turn and be able to retain the revenues that they have in hand. But current discussion with the budget manager last week, I think it was, 2 weeks ago, we look like we're doing extremely well in sales tax, property tax, even local optional tax, sales taxes. We're doing very well, but I would rather, as I mentioned back in March and then June, is shoot for a lower anticipated growth rate deliberately to underestimate our growth and work within that parameter?
When we talk about growth, are we talking about population growth or sales tax growth? Because when we look at the property tax growth, I think the population growth, regardless of what the federal government does, is there, right? Those numbers are pretty solid and pretty, I mean, as far as I look at the growth rate for the property tax portion, I feel comfortable with the estimates that we have. But then I think your point is very valid when it comes to the sales tax portion. I think that's the area that we need to look at. Am I articulating that well?
Yeah,
Is that okay? So just making sure that we're all in agreement that the population growth has already happened.
Yes.
Right. And so we'll realize that growth regardless, because it just is. So if you look at the budget that's been in the system there, sorry, I'm pulling that up real quick. So in 2021, our actuals $52,171,948, and in 2022, it's 56,450, right? And so that was the actual estimated is 52,171,948, and then the budget draft has the 56,450,000. So those we can agree on that growth has already occurred, it has already happened, and those are the estimates given to us from the state based off of our population growth. So I think regardless, we have at least $4.3-ish million growth that will occur naturally that we can agree upon. And then what we need to decide on our revenue numbers is what numbers do we feel comfortable with the sales tax growth, right?
Yes, but I think that the 56,450 number has not been realized. It's projected.
Right, based off of our growth projections, but
Yeah.
And-
pretty consistently
Been consistent with that, but those are projected numbers.
right. And
So
from
we don't have
everything
that
I
in the
can
bank
see,
is what I'm saying.
Right.
It's something that,
but we do have a lot of those properties, the building permits have already been pulled. Those properties have already been sold. I think historically and statistically, I think we should feel pretty comfortable about that number. So then what we need to decide on is our sales tax revenue growth.
Yeah, because as I look at the draft numbers, is that an 8% projected growth in property taxes, 52 million rounded numbers to 56? That's about 8% growth,
We're pretty close to that.
yeah.
8.5 or so.
Well, 7.6
Yeah, and
based on the actual.
the option sales tax, that's a growth of about $10 million, 9.5. Because if we haven't had a serious economic crumble for a while, but property taxes could be one of those things that are affected if individuals are no longer able to buy. And we have empty homes that were expected to be bought. There'll be, of course, foreclosures as a result. And people will live with family, friends, whoever.
And I think it would take a lot right now. I mean, if you look at the Central Utah Realtors Association, they estimate that we have a shortage of 10,000 homes on the market in our
Yes.
county alone, right? And so we are already significantly behind in that market. So even if the housing market were to slow significantly, we would lag behind the rest of the country in that. So I think we'd have some runway that we could react on.
Yeah, because I remember 2008, it was not as deep as some of the things I think in my mind
Right.
it could be. But 2008, the crash that happened there, that lasted, what was that, 5 years altogether, roughly, before we came out of that hole?
But here in Utah County, we didn't even see the results of the 2008 crash until 2009. So we had a little bit of a runway for that.
Right.
And we came out of it several years before the rest of the country. So the rest of the country really felt that 2008 to 2013. We felt it 2009 to 2011.
It's like a ripple effect. It hits the more dense population first, and then ripples toward Utah, Wyoming.
Well, then it
area.
also hits populations where people want to leave
Yes,
more.
yeah.
And it affects places where people want to come to less, right? And we are fortunate in that aspect. So I think on the property tax one, I feel really comfortable just sitting with the estimated revenues as is, and then focusing our efforts on the sales tax revenues.
Because the line 38,900, the appropriate undesignated fund balance, it had the $7.6 million rounded numbers. That probably shouldn't be part of our amended budget because that was originally CARES Act funding that we had used elsewhere. And so for like other grants, it should probably not be in this document because for me, I don't want to include any grant funds or any
Right.
kind of like that. So I just want to look at our actual revenues and expenditures and take it at the face value there.
Right, absolutely. I know that legally we're required to put the 2020 actuals on the budget document. So it will include the actuals from 2020 on that, but I agree that we should not anticipate any of those costs in our 2022 budget.
Yeah, so for that column, in my figuring here, I'm looking at nearly $99 million instead of the 106.5 on that particular column. So that's one of those smaller things I was looking at. That's a wrong word, smaller things, but looking at that as along with the other things, I want to get more detail from the departments that I'd follow up with them and look at, can we work within the 2021 budget with, we originally said between 1 and 2, perhaps 2.5% increase over that, and kind of move forward from that point.
So are you thinking the 2021 adjusted budget or the 2021 estimated final budget?
That would be the amended budget.
So I think it would make more sense if we looked at the actual estimated rather than, I mean, I agree with you that we should look at the 2021 budget and stay within a small percentage of that, but I would rather look at the 2021 actual estimated rather than the 2021 amended.
Yeah, because I have that. I think you're referring to this one here.
Yeah, so the actual estimated is basically just taking, so for example, the amended budget was amended in June. Yeah, it was amended in June, and here we sit in November. I would rather look at the updated information having significantly more data. So I would rather look at our November numbers and then our estimates for December, so that if we're going to look at 2021, I'd rather look at the 2021 actual estimated rather than the 2021 amended that was amended back in June. But other than that, I agree, absolutely.
We get originals for November this year, before the year is out?
So I think, Jeremy, we did come up with an estimated, you did develop an estimated 2021 actuals, right?
Is that for November, though? Can we get actuals for November?
No.
Because we're like 2 months ahead,
tax.
or we're 2 months behind on the actuals, is that correct?
I think we're looking at sales tax.
We don't have the
Property
actuals.
tax we feel comfortable with, so it would be the sales tax. So you can get us estimated actuals.
And the treasurer has like a monthly statement where we are with the property
Right,
tax.
and that is in the uploaded budget schedule that's on today's agenda? Very close, okay. Yeah, and I think if we're going off of those numbers, if we're going off the 2021 actual estimated, I would agree with you that we could do that and with confidence only have a slight increase.
Okay.
I guess the question is, though, not necessarily, I mean, I know we're talking about revenue on this, but even if we were to put that, and their forecast number was 42,278,093. That was their forecast number for the 2021. That's taking into account what we know and the projection in the last 2 years. And you know, that would be fine. I don't necessarily have a problem with, you know, forecasting that in there. The question's going to come up though, is how much are we willing to put into, because the revenue side and the expense side have to equal. And so it just comes out to a decision of how comfortable are we to raise the general fund from the 98 million up to a certain number. And then if there's over and above on the revenue side, then we drop that down into fund balance, or we drop that down into a line item that says unanticipated inflationary matters.
I like that one.
So there's two options that we can do with that. That's why
We could even do a combination of that.
well, we could, because then if it materializes,
Right.
then it fills the bucket. Or we could do a gradual cascading where we say, you know, it's going to fill one first.
Right.
So we could say, you know, we're going to fill first the unanticipated inflationary matter bucket first, and then if it fills up to whatever that number is, then it could bounce over and fill up into the fund balance, which we have typically been using in some cases to help with our CIP plan and others. So
Right.
those are two options. The big question is how far do we want to step, into the expense side, and what's that dollar amount look like? Because
Right.
that's going to be the budgeted side in which the departments are going to have to then go through on their line items and say, yes, this is a higher priority, and this is not.
Yeah.
And then fill those with a dollar amount, not necessarily a percentage amount, because the percentages I think have to be worked differently, but on a dollar amount, if a department gets $2 million and then they take that $2 million and they prioritize it on the list that they have for their criteria. And it's not us going out there and saying, scratch that one, add that one, because sometimes they won't make sense if we're doing that.
Yeah. One of the things that I would be comfortable with is on the revenue side. We're looking at a potential growth in population of about 7.6%, so about 7.5%. And we can feel confident that we're going to realize the revenue growth in that based off of population and household increases. I think maybe an area that we could start with is mirroring that percentage in the sales tax growth. Because if we know that our population is going to grow by that much just organically, then I would feel comfortable saying we're going to have an organic growth of sales tax revenues at that same percentage. That brings us well below many of the estimates for neighboring counties that we've seen. And then as far as looking at the expense side, I would feel comfortable mirroring that in the expense side, and anything beyond that we would put into a fund like you're talking about, an inflationary fund, that once we've covered inflationary costs, the remaining amount could go into a CIP or a fund balance.
Yeah. And it'd be interesting because we were all, at UAC, we were down at UAC, and I had a lot of good conversations with a lot of
Me too.
the elected officials down there. There was a few interesting conversations, not just with them, but also with some of our cities in the county. Some of them take their actual numbers on sales taxes that they have the actual numbers for, not the projected numbers. So in 2020, the sales tax was $34,379,525. I'm trying to be accurate with it. That's the actuals that came in, and they're nervous enough about sales tax that they hold the line on that one as they're budgeting into the next year, because they don't know what's actually going to happen. And so they hold the line on that one. I looked at that, and I could see why they do that. They deliberately do that and find themselves a year behind because they don't know how the swings are going to go on a sales tax basis, and so they want to try to forecast or mitigate that by going back to actuals and then looking at the year that they have on a forecast basis and see if they're going on an upward trend or a downward trend, and then try to adjust appropriately.
Mr. Lee, so what you're saying, they're working off a 2020 budget for 2022?
They're working off of the 2020
Actual
actuals.
budget dollars.
So not the budget, but the actuals.
So revenues.
So what actually came in, and then they hold that line into their, not the 2021, because we're through that, 2022 is their starting point. So that they would start that sales tax. I'm looking at the big one, which is the county option sales tax. That one would have a starting point, and from their perspective, at 34. I'm not saying that I necessarily totally agree with that.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is that it's interesting to hear the different variations
Right.
of how things are done, around us as they try to anticipate and worry about a tax that could have some volatility to it. Our property tax, pretty consistent. I mean,
Right.
that's the reason why we have it in place, and the option for that the sales tax was put in 1996 or so as an option for us, which we did, and so that gives us that a little bit of back and forth, which helps us on the market side. But again, I think that even if we were to adopt what was being proposed, we still have to come to a number on the expense side that we can agree with, and then from there, everything else can be dropped into those funds that we're talking about.
Yeah, I agree.
So.
So my preference would be to take the 2021 actual estimated, because we've got pretty good tools that help us, especially being this late in the year. I think we've got pretty good tools there. And then take that and grow it by a reasonable amount based off of historical data and our growth rate, and then start from there.
And my thought was which departments need it the most and move it that kind of direction. There may be a percentage for some departments and a higher percentage for other different departments. And look where the growth has been in the past and see where staff increases might be necessary to meet the demands of the population growth.
Yeah. So one of the things that's been in the slides that were presented to us from the budget staff is if you look at the cities in our county and you look at their projected sales tax budgets for 2021 versus 2022, I think the lowest one is estimating an increase of 15%. The highest is estimating an increase of 50%. So the cities in our county are looking at significant growth. So I think if we held ours steady at like a 7.6 or a 7.5 to 8%, which is where we look at our organic growth and our property tax revenue, I think we're being incredibly conservative. In fact, we're still looking at a projected revenue increase that is half of that of our lowest city.
Yeah. Right now, projections on this, if I were to take the CARES Act money out of the 2021 amended budget and go from 106.5, I would drop it down to almost $99 million. And we're in the projected draft we have, at least the draft we have for 2022, the 114,400,000. That's a 15.5% or so increase. So yes, we're anticipating some strong growth. When I was proposing the tax reduction, I deliberately was trying to underestimate sales growth for this current year based off of the previous 5 to 8 years, and both property and sales. And I think I was 4% is what I was shooting for. And of course, like I already said, we kind of broke through the ceiling on that one. And I wouldn't mind keeping it maybe closer to 3 or so percent for this coming year off and use 2021 budget for this move that way. But an average maybe somewhere about 3.5%.
If you look at the estimated actuals rather than the budget that was set in June, the estimated actuals are at 113 million, and then the projected for 2022 is 114 million. So it's only a $1 million increase, which is less than 1%. It's a 0.8% increase. So I think the estimated budget that we have is actually more conservative than what you're thinking, and I feel comfortable with that.
Yeah. So 3.5. Somewhere
Well,
there.
see,
That we're
I'm
talking
not comfortable with going off the projected sales tax. I mean, it's interesting because over the years we've never done that. We've always kind of done budget to budget, and now this is a projected sales tax one. I am more inclined, and I'll just give you the number that I've come to on it, and we're talking general fund. But I'm more inclined on the whole increase, or the increase with it when it comes to the general fund itself at being at $105 million, which that $105 million is an increase from that 98, well, almost 99 to 105.
So you're looking at about a $6 million overall increase.
Right. So are you looking at,
And
that's less than our actuals though.
Yeah, because the actual property and county sales, local option, that's what, about $89, $90 million. And the draft has it down as 104, if I'm not misreading that. it's about 105, just between those three components here. So
So you're thinking 105, is that what you said?
105. 105 is the step into next year. I mean, part of the reason why we went with the 2021 budget numbers this year is so that we weren't going back and trying to reconfigure off of actual numbers from 2020. And so in my mind, I can look at it and say, we're going to make it through this year, and can we step into next year with the same budget and still do all right? And I think that we probably could with the same budget to a certain extent, but I do think because we are fortunate enough to have increases on there, I don't have a problem raising the entire budget up $6 million is what that basically is, and spreading that appropriately through the other departments as we step into next year, and then as we get to where we start to prove the model or not of the revenue coming in, we can. And again, if we want to say, let's look at putting the the projected actuals into our revenue, that'd be fine, because then there'll be money in there. If it goes to 110, then we can put that money into that, the other $5 million, and then we can cascade it down for inflationary matters, and we can step into this next year instead of jumping into it.
So are you looking at 105 in revenues for just property and sales tax, but you're not considering all the other revenues?
No, it's not. This is the 105 is not a revenue discussion. It's an expense discussion.
Okay, so
if
you're
it's
looking at,
105 on the expense side,
and we're just talking general fund,
we're just talking general
and
fund.
we're not looking at an inflationary account at that point.
And that would be,
And we're not looking at any fund balance.
Right.
project. Okay.
So, and that's a good distinction. So, for instance, if we said we were going to put $3 million into an inflationary account, what would happen is on the expense side, we'd see 108 million.
Okay.
But $3 million of that would be into the inflationary account, and a restricted inflationary account. I'm just trying to pull it back down into a department, and then the others we can have discussion.
So you're looking at 105 million for base funding for departments,
Right.
not looking at any of the big additional things like fund balance, like inflationary accounts. What about salary study? Would that be on top of that? Because those aren't, like a salary study is currently not baked in to the budget expenses.
That would be one of the reasons I wanted to pause
You
a
see
little
what I
bit.
mean?
So half of it is in 2021, because since we
Right.
pulled it across, there was $2.5 million that was in the 2021. If we look at what that looks like now, and it's and we still have to kind of work out the numbers, because I know Rudy and I were talking about numbers, and Ralph's here. No, he's not.
He was here.
He stepped out. Those numbers didn't quite match, so I was getting numbers of
Right, but a potential additional salary study.
Yes, and yeah, Ralph.
right. So there might be additional salary study, and
Because he sent us one yesterday, didn't he?
So I've got numbers that say
I got an email.
3.1, and I also have numbers at 1.8. But then when I talked with Rudy, they come out different. So I don't know if we have
and there's been-
benefits in there too that are
Right.
attached to it or not.
And there's
so
like
the
a
numbers are
recent
coming funny.
update based off of our admin meeting on Monday.
Based off of our admin, because this is a whole different philosophy shift
Right, and so
that
what
we're
I
doing.
want, and so I'm totally fine working through the details of that. What I'm wondering is if your 105 million includes that. Because
Well,
I can be with you on the 105 million if
does.
it means,
Half of it's probably included.
okay, but not all of it.
Not all of it.
Okay.
Because I don't know how, because we haven't budgeted for
This
what we're
is-
calling the donut hole. I shouldn't call it that. The 2 to 6.
Yeah.
The 2 to 6 is
doesn't
something brand
include
new
that.
for us.
Right. And so that would be in addition to the 105.
That's a 1.8.
Right.
And then,
And then an additional salary study
and the
potential.
additional was, I wish Ralph was here, but
Somebody
again,
text
half
Ralph.
of it. So let's just say that the additional salary study and the additional, and this is an important part to put with, I think, for county employees, because we're trying to find a way that we do this market study every single year.
Right.
And doing that market study on a targeted basis every single year, instead of a COLA, is so that we can get the numbers to come up, and the first 2 to 6% would be realized with all of the individuals that have between 2 and 6% below
So-
market.
He sent an updated email that is just a few hours ago. So you may not have seen that one yet. And he, like, for example, he's saying an approximate 3.5%. So it would be 1.6 million for public employees and 1.5 million for public safety employees. So that's just over the three, it's 3.1 million. And he says that's 3.1 million in wages plus an additional 981,000 in benefits. So we're looking at pretty close to $4 million.
Right.
So if you're talking 105 million, but it doesn't include that $4 million or fund balance plus a discretionary fund, I think we're pretty close. I'm agreeing with you.
I think we're very, very close. I think if we were to continue this till December 1, we can then take some time to finalize my visits with the different departments and finalize these numbers. Ralph told me pretty much the same thing as he told you, Commissioner Gardner, about this a little while ago. And so our actual revenues appear, just the property tax, local sales tax, and county option tax looks like it's a roughly 105.4 million income is what they're projecting, but that's a projection. So if we can work with a little bit below that as our projected number, I would be happier with that, just in case, again, if there's a turn in economic events.
So let me see if I can break this down and see if we can, because staff's going to be looking for direction. And they're going to be looking for, what do we do? And the department heads are also going to be looking for, what are we going to do? This is a what if we agreed that the expenses was $105 million on that side, and we also agreed that the salary, the salary study, and there's two parts to the salary study. There's a first part that will hit everyone that's below market between 2 and 6%. So we'll just call it the 2 to 6% part of the salary study. That one there is, tell me the number, because I don't have that number if you have it on it.
4 million.
Yeah.
Are you talking
Yeah, Ralph estimated. Ralph's most recent update is approximately $4 million for the 2-part salary study.
okay, yeah, you're talking overall.
Yes, including benefits, salary and benefits.
Talking both sides of this thing, the 2.6 and for the other one. Okay, so let's just say 4.
4.
So we got 4 million on there, $4 million. Now we have to take out what we already have baked in, which is probably $2.5 million, which we've had in the 2021, right? When I saw it on the sheet as well, it's not 2.5. I think it's 2.285. But whatever that number is, there would be a minus on that.
Look what magically appears.
He got the bat signal.
Yeah, I saw it in the sky. So, yes, Ralph Barnes, HR. Any questions I can answer?
So because we had this conversation, there's a little confusion going on. Only about a couple hours ago, I think we were talking, and I thought you told me 1.8.
Yes, that would
and
be
3.1.
That is correct. So, the 3.1 does not include the cost of benefits. So it was almost 4 million with the cost of benefits.
Okay.
Wages are 3.1. Now that's the actual market study, during 2021.
Right.
The 1.8 is something we proposed to do in January to address those who were under market but
2 to
didn't
6.
reach the threshold to have an increase in grade.
Okay, and that would be
Losing my voice, sorry.
1.8.
Right. So that's really it. Those are the things I've recommended.
Okay, so roughly 4 million plus 1.8 million for a
That's
total of
5.8.
5.8 million. Okay.
Okay, so if we do change the number from 4 to 5.8, and then we minus out, how much was the market study this year? Is it 2.5?
That was what was set aside.
was set
spent
aside?
about 1.5.
But we set aside in the budget 2.5.
Yes, that is correct.
So the 2.5 would come off of the 5.8, and that would be the number on the market study. It would still be 5.8, but overall, that was part of the carryover, if I want to call it
Correct.
that.
So
if we have
1.5 minus 5.8 is
2.5.
2.5. Oh,
So just to clarify, is that 2.5 already built into this budget?
So 5.8 minus 2.5 is 3.3.
We need to ask Rudy if how he addressed that, so.
Technically, the 2.5 million is included in the baseline numbers because we started off with the adjusted. Did we take that in? No. Yeah, that was in, yeah, because we, I'm gonna have to double check that. Because there's some things we didn't pull over, and let me look at that real quick here, and then I'll have an answer for you in a few minutes, okay?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
So we got the 105, we
Yep.
got the 5.8, that for the market studies, both
Yep.
sides of them.
Yeah.
And
Plus
then,
like 3 million for an inflation fund that we could put in restricted, that
and
we
that-
only need to utilize if we've seen inflation.
Yeah.
But we also, if it's in restricted, we only need to access it if we recognize the revenue.
right.
Right.
So,
So-
and that can be whatever.
Right.
Because we could put that in there. But I think that the number, the important number.
2 million, 3 million,
is
something like that.
for the department heads is the 1.5 million,
Mm-hmm.
because that then is going to have to be allocated out, and I think Rudy and Samantha are going to have to do some work on that one based off
enterprise
of
fund.
their size and their asks, because
Yep.
we have varying different levels of that, and so then that additional $6 million as that's divided up, then would go to the department heads. The department heads would be able to take, let's just say a number of $2 million. If one of the departments had a $2 million increase, they would take that and apply that to their budget
Yes.
and send it back.
Right.
So the other, the 5.8 is more on us and putting it in a restricted account, and so is the
Inflationary.
inflationary. And we can put, we could put the inflationary, we could put $10 million in
Right.
there. And
All
if
of
it
those are
materializes,
restricted,
it
and if it
does it.
materializes, it does,
If
and
it doesn't, then
doesn't.
it's
Right.
less.
Yeah, and I think 3 million would probably be plenty, and then if at the mid-year adjustment, we need to adjust that based off of actuals, we could. So I agree 100% with all that. I'm tracking with you. I just have a couple of questions. The tentative budget showed a deficit of 2.8 million in the A&C fund. And it showed a transfer from the general fund to the A&C fund to make up for that $2.8 million deficit
year.
this next year. So that would need to be added to it, right? To the expenses, because that's not currently something that we've done, historically, the A&C fund has had more money and it's made transfers to the general fund. But we've got a situation this year where the A&C fund is not fully funded. So that's one question I have that we'll need to work out over the next couple of weeks.
Why, just if I interject, why is ANC behind?
Because they're not collecting enough to cover their expenses this year, because that rate has stayed steady, but their expenses have continued to go
The
up.
areas that they're not collecting are,
It's just that the rate isn't high enough to cover their expenses, because the rate has stayed. Actually, the rate has decreased every single year, but their expenses go up as salaries
And
go up.
that also, and I know it's not going to happen and materialize the same year, but it might be one of those things where we have to look at the
The A&C
levy.
rate.
yeah.
Agreed.
I'm curious
I agree.
about the curve.
It's not going to materialize this
You
year.
know, because if
Right.
there
And
may
so
be,
we will need to cover those
I'm
expenses.
curious
this year.
about the expenses, what those were. I'm not unclear why that's outpaced their revenue.
Well, an example of it is the fact that we're going to have to probably put in close to $1 million into hiring a contractor to appraise our properties, since we can't hire appraisers. We've had how many open positions in the appraiser's office? We have 5 open positions, and we have a statutory obligation to reassess every property every 4 years, and we will not meet that unless we put in an additional $1 million.
That's been a historical issue for the appraisers. We can't hire people to stay because they go out and make
Because we don't
twice
pay
what we
enough,
can pay 'em.
right? We pay significantly lower than the private sector, and therefore we can't keep people.
So is this ANC shortfall, is this a graph that kind of goes like this type of thing, or?
You know, it's a graph that's been leading up. We've known this is coming. This is a cliff that we've been knowing about for a while. Do you want to speak to that? Absolutely, Bert Garfield.
Albert Garfield, Deputy Assessor. We are required every 5 years to do a property review of every property in Utah County. So we have a schedule. But we've been so focused on new growth with the appraisers we can find that about 80% of our parcels have to be reviewed in the next 2 years. because we haven't been able to hire an appraiser for years, because every appraiser right now is making a ton of money because everybody's refinancing because interest rates are low, their equity is through the roof. So they're refinancing, and every refinance needs an appraisal. So we can't compete. We did do what we could to try to raise their salaries, but we already have a position since we've raised our salaries and not one person's applied. So we have this train wreck, so to speak, coming to us because there's all these properties that we have to review in the next 2 years that we haven't been able to do. So that's why we have an RFP on the table. But anyway, hope that answers it.
Well, and I mean, rightly so, the county would prefer you to be focusing that on new growth.
And we
so
can barely
you've been doing
we're not
it.
even really keeping up with the new growth either. And the new growth is what brings in the revenue. So the one thing you don't want to do is sacrifice appraisers because they pick up the growth. So, but we have these positions that just sit there.
Right.
And by the time we even, I had, just anecdotally, I had one person apply. I said, oh, he goes, actually I applied. I decided I don't really want to work there. And I said, just please come in and talk to me. And I was trying to convince him to work here. And after I talked to him for about an hour, he said, well, let me think about it, talk to my wife. He never called me back.
So,
I couldn't even.
Yeah, as I've been talking to your office about this quite a bit, and the appraisers out in town make between 2 to 3 or so more than we can pay them.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, granted, that's not going to last. The people we have here are the people that went through the crash of the 2007 to 2009, and they don't think this is going to keep up. But there's some appraisers out there, they're thinking, I'm just going to reap what I can sow while I can, because why not? Right. And then when it crashes, I'll just go work for something else. But they're just making it while they can.
But in the meantime, we
have this obligation. Sorry.
Exactly. We have the obligation. So that's roughly, $1 million. That's going to be a large part of it, plus just natural growth. But I think you're absolutely right, Commissioner Lee. I mean, that levy will have to be considered in the future, but this year we do have that to consider.
We do.
And then the only, so 2 other questions, sorry, that was one. So I'm 100% with you on the base and plus the HR, plus a restricted inflationary. So I'm tracking with you on all that. My questions were the A&C fund is one. I think in the budget, the health department transfer stays steady. So are you assuming that in your 105 million that the health department transfer stays steady?
Well, we do need to have a discussion on a recapitalization, and that's a discussion that I think that we can kind of takes some of our monies that we have now that are and the health department can take some of their fund balance that they have, because they have
almost $8 million.
Almost $8 million in there. So I think that we can use those to stabilize some of that too.
Okay, that's I love both of those ideas to stabilize that. Okay, so that answers that question. And then just the last one would be if we have departments that have enterprise funds, fee services, and their fees are either growing or staying. Actually, if their fees are growing and then their expenses are growing at a rate that's lower than their fees are growing, do we want to consider them separately?
And that is a fantastic question as we're looking at it, because I see where you're going on this one, and I think this one goes towards marriage and license a lot more than anything else. But it is a good conversation to have all along, especially as commissioners. And that is a lot of times we put in our revenue projections, or we see revenue projections coming in from departments, and then through the years. We get to the end of the year and it doesn't materialize, or it exceeds. So we've got to have a real serious conversation about revenue projections, because if it doesn't materialize, it becomes a double hit to our budgets, and if it exceeds, then it becomes a benefit to that one area. And if we separate that out, that's an interesting concept of separating it out. I'm not sure exactly how we go about that. I haven't wrapped my mind around on a separation of that on a fee base. If we did, though, I'd want to make sure and hold the line with it.
Because there's a couple of thoughts I like.
Right. It's the type of thing, it's almost similar to the inflationary account, where it's like we could almost set targets, if you reach this target, then these.
On a revenue basis. So if a department says we're projecting that we're going to collect $100,000 on a revenue basis this year, then we actually fund that in an incremental basis through the year as they reach their mile points.
Correct.
Posts.
That was one way we could look at it.
Interesting. Yeah.
Keep it within that fee-for-service model that
Right.
the state law would like us to do.
Right.
So anyway, so those, I tracked with you the whole way through. My only questions were the A&C transfer, the health department, which I kind of liked your idea of excess this year plus fund balance from the health department to cover recap, and then enterprise funds. Those were my only three. Other than that, I think you and I are on the same page.
So then, with that though, Rudy's going to have to take the 105 or the $6 million increase on this thing and come with a proposal to us at some point in time that says this is how it's going to be divided up, so
Yeah.
that departments could look
And
at it.
there's a
Is that
couple-
good enough direction that you have on that?
Technically, this is your budget, so we really need some direction. On
We've
where-
got 2 weeks. I don't mind scheduling quite a bit of time over the
Yeah,
next
and
2
I-
weeks to sit
And
down
we're
with
happy
you.
to work with you on that.
Okay.
I mean, I did verify, I'm sorry, my, as I get older, my memory isn't quite as sharp as it used to be, but we did strip out anything related to the salary study previous to that, but we do have money in there for the second part of it, which is the 3 million, the bigger piece. So we have about 3.8 million dollars in the tentative budget was included related to the market study, or phase 2, is that what we're calling it? But we did not carry over anything from the prior year.
Right. Well, I wasn't anticipating that it was a carryover,
Yeah.
because that, what was not spent on that is going to drop straight to fund balance.
Correct, exactly.
And so we
that's-
only spent $1 million something is Ralph's.
That's pretty close. It's within $100,000, because if you pulled out all, but you gave 3.4, and 5.8 minus 3.4 is 2.4, and we figured it was 2.5. So we're only $100,000 off.
Now, the other thing to remember
that's
is
close
not
enough.
all of that is general fund.
Right.
Right.
Some of that will be spread among the other departments, and roughly
The majority will be public safety, though.
probably about, yeah,
So that's gonna be
65
general
to
fund.
70% roughly is what we're looking at. for
Right.
those.
That sounds about where I'm thinking as well, so.
So it sounds like we have,
Commissioners,
go ahead.
just a follow-up question, and I'm excited to go back and listen to this discussion on YouTube so I can follow what I've been trying to keep up here. But just to remind you, we do have to have specific numbers in each line item. For example,
Right.
we have to have a sales tax number, we have to have a property tax number, and there's been a lot of discussion about more of just a general fund growth number, and that's fine. But at the end of the day, we have to plug in an actual number for each revenue source. And so I just want to bring that to your attention that at some point, an individual commissioner or the group of commissioners need to settle on a specific number
Right.
for that.
Right.
So we'd put in the tentative budget what we had estimated is the most likely number. Clearly, you guys have a different approach, and that's great, but it has to boil down to a specific number
Right.
by revenue type, not just send this number across. We can't get there without
Well,
a specific
this conversation, because I was swinging wildly from here to here, not knowing where we were going to settle. So it's really hard to say, let's put a budget schedule out there unless we have some sort of consensus. So this is the conversation that we need to have. And now that we have this conversation, I think us as individual commissioners can go down through there and start putting those numbers into place on what they are. And we have to give enough time for the departments to also react to it at some point in time as well.
Yeah, and we'll make ourselves available to you to help out with this process for sure.
I call Friday. My Friday's fairly open.
But we will need direction from you, and we can plug in the numbers that you're coming up with to help out, and put this budget together.
So Rudy, I just want to add, so my question to you is, do you want to maybe do a work meeting where there can be this type of discussion line by line for those key elements?
Yeah.
Or do you want us to get potentially 3 different numbers and average them? I mean, there has to be a process that what needs to be voted on is going to be a single number.
I think if we started with one commissioner and then we bring that to the other commissioners, then they can see what parts they agree with. That's an easy way to do it. And then anything that they, we go to each commissioner, anything they agree with, then that's easy. Then we can just if we've got numbers that everyone agrees with, let's move those aside and move on to the other ones. I will block between 1 and 5 p.m. on Friday of this week, and I will dedicate to come and sit down and go line item by line item and let you know what I agree with. And then maybe that's a starting point for
Well,
Commissioner Lee and
I'll do
Commissioner
the,
Sakovic.
I'll do the same, but it won't be on
Okay.
Friday.
Yeah.
We'll find a time.
So
Yeah,
it
we'll
sounds like we're
schedule
gonna go do individual meetings with each commissioner and
Yeah.
at
And
some
work
point
out,
work
maybe at
toward
a work
single
session
number.
prior to actually adopting a budget on December 1st? Is that kind of how the approach should
If you, unless you
be?
can all magically arrive at the same numbers, which would be great. I'm not against that, but I'm just saying, throwing out one big number doesn't get us.
Got it.
With the level of
You need the
specificity that's
lines,
needed.
individual lines,
Right.
including.
So a
the-
work meeting may be the solution, or it may happen on its own, but just wanted to clarify that that's what we're up against, is we've got to boil down to one number.
But if we were looking to do that before the 1st, that would have to happen as a special meeting on another day to be done.
I wonder, is there room to squeeze in a work session prior to December 1? Or does that have to be noticed?
It has to be noticed.
But it only needs 24 hours notice.
24-hour notice, so we could still do that, what the
Yeah.
date looks like.
And my availability is for next week is only Monday. My wife's having a surgery, so I'm not available the rest of the week.
On Monday of next
Yeah,
week,
Monday I'm available next week,
not after.
not after that, no.
So,
But after the
Mondays.
holiday, I'll be available as needed.
Monday's what I'm looking at.
Monday, today is the 17th, Monday the 21st for you, Commissioner Gardner, the 19th.
The 19th, I'm free between 1 and 5 p.m. on the 19th.
And
I could do the 19th.
what time are you, Commissioner Lee?
I'm going to do it from the 1 to 5.
1 to 5 on Monday? I can do it.
Oh, see, I've got that. I know I've got that one meeting.
I'm open Tuesday so far at least, anyway, Tuesday.
On Monday, on Friday of this week, I could do 1 to 5. On Monday of this week, I have a Board of Health meeting that starts at 4, but I could do 1 to 4. And then but at 4 o'clock, I need to head over and be on the Board of
On
Health.
Monday?
On
And we're
Monday.
talking about the 22nd, right? Not
Yeah,
the 29th.
Monday, the 22nd, I have a Board of Health meeting 4 to 6. But I could be 1 to 4.
And so I can do either Monday or Tuesday.
But Tuesday doesn't work for
It
me.
won't work for me, but.
Okay,
Monday
then
will.
Monday,
We could do Monday. We could do a Monday work session.
yeah.
I could do 1 to 4.
On the 22nd.
Yes,
I'm
the
sorry, I was
22nd.
thinking in terms of meetings separately.
Oh,
with-
separately.
Oh, separately.
Okay, well, I'm good
We
Friday.
can set that outside of this meeting
Okay,
then.
because, well, I was just trying, okay, because we
Well,
could
we
do
can't
it,
do a
work
work
session.
session on the 22nd.
we could do it the 24th, the day before Thanksgiving.
No.
No. Let's do I could do a work session the 22nd if you wanted to do a work session. If you want to do it individually, I've got Friday afternoon. If you want to do a work session, I can do Monday.
I'll schedule on an individual basis on Monday afternoon.
Okay.
Okay, then I'll do
I don't-
Friday.
I don't know
So
how.
you can take your Monday
And
off.
And
I
then
could be
we
Monday
have the
morning.
following Monday, if there needs to be a work session,
Right.
The 29th.
before the 1st, we have Monday and Tuesday prior to that.
Yeah, if we're pretty close
On an
together.
as-needed basis.
So Monday, the work session, the 29th of November.
We could do that instead of admin meeting.
Yes, I would rather do that.
We could do a work session Monday instead of admin meeting at 3. I'm booked.
And if
up
there's
until
admin
3.
points, we could just email it to
Yeah,
each
we're
other.
available on the 29th or the 30th.
Yeah.
But
So work
we'll
session.
work individually on Monday, the 22nd then.
So work session, November 29th, what time might be best? Should it be at the same time or is it earlier in the day?
If we were going to do a work session on Monday, the 29th, I would need it to be 3 o'clock at the earliest.
Yeah, that works for me.
Yeah.
Keep it to what maximum probably should be able to get
So
this
Brian,
wrapped
you'll
up.
have to work on that.
Yeah.
Well, if we can work some of these numbers out individually, we can come together a little bit closer, I think, in that work session.
So,
We may not need it.
So we may not have to have a marathon session.
Agreed.
so it could be an hour, hour and a half perhaps, starting at 3.
I would probably book 2 hours, just
I would say 2.
1 hour is not,
3 to 5.
I would sincerely doubt that we can get it done in 1 hour.
Let's see if we can surprise you.
Well,
We
okay.
get enough work done in our individual sessions, we
Yeah.
might be able
You
to,
know,
but
that's true.
I would still block 3 to 5 just in case.
So November 29, 3 to 5 for a work session to
Yep,
finalize the numbers then. Okay, we'll go line by line then.
Work on them.
to work on them. And then we would
Finalize them
finalize
on
them
the commission.
in the commission meeting on the 1st.
Yeah.
It's not quite a week before Thanksgiving, but it's really close, Rudy.
Yep.
Okay. Well, I think we've got some direction there. We will need a motion to continue this, though.
I will move to continue this until December 1st.
Until December 1st. And I will second that motion.
We got a motion and a second to continue item number 26 to December 1st. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passes 3-0. Okay. Item number 27 is to approve and authorize the signing of a resolution changing the existing salaries of the county officers of Utah County. Ralph, if you're going to come up on this one, or do you want to sit for a little bit until, or stand? Okay, I would like to have your perspective on it, since we've worked together on a lot of this. To start with, I'm going to pull these papers apart so I can have them individually. We did have a public hearing on this one. As you see the documentations on it, you will see that there are adjustments to all the elected officials. And I'll tell you where this started for me and how this kind of moved. I got an email from Under Sheriff Buffton asking a question. He was asking a question about salaries for the sheriff and said that he was concerned about them, that they were not accurately being portrayed. And so my first reaction to that was, well, I don't know if that is true or not. So I looked at it, started going into to looking at the historical. I came into office in 2015, and as I went back and looked historically on it, I saw a couple of things that were interesting to me when I was going over the sheriff's salary. One, that before that period of time, if you look at the historical data on it, the sheriff was paid higher than the commissioners. That was the first thing that alerted me that maybe this position, something happened. Something did happen, and it happened to be political. So something political happened, and then at 2015, all of a sudden the salaries started to jump differently, in which you see the results till where we're at today. And so with that, I took that information and thought, well, we got to do something different in here. Take a look at it all the way across the board, see if we can take the heat off of these political dynamics when it comes to salaries, and especially elected officials. We are in the political realm, and so you can't get away from certain amount of politics. And Ralph and I had long discussions over a period of time on different options, and they floated back and forth in kind of wild as you're trying to find some conclusion. And what came out of those discussions was this, what you see now. And so what I tried to do is I tried to find a way to take the heat off of the political side of it and not compare Utah County's elected officials directly to the other counties in the other counties. And the reason for that is because you get caught up into their politics when it comes to how they pay. And we've seen that. If you look at different counties, a lot of times when we do market studies, we do a comparison basis, which I think is rightfully so, on individuals, because an individual in this county could go work at another county, and so there's a certain competition. That's not quite the same when we're talking about elected officials. We just can't say, oh, you know what, I'm just going to transfer from here and go be a commissioner in another county. You have to run for office and go through that process. It's a different realm altogether. So trying to take the political heat off of it and find something that what seems substantial that we could move forward with, I figured it was best, since we're representatives of the people in Utah County, that we tie our salaries to something steady that has no political, we can't influence it. In that the median salaries of those that we represent is a trigger point or a starting point for for us. And so I took the United States Census inflation adjusted median household income for Utah County for 2 years prior. And the reason why we did the 2 years prior, because that was a stable one. I talked with Ralph about it. He agreed that that was a stable number to go off of, at least to start a base. And we used that one, which was $79,545 in 2019. Then we multiplied that by a factor, and the factor was 1.61. And we did a historical look at what those factors were in the sense of comparing them to a median income. And the 1.61 was one that seemed consistent as we were trying to balance it. And so if we did that, for the commissioners, and we take the $79,546 and we times that by that 1.61 factor, then it turns out to be $128,067. That is something that is defendable in the sense that if the median income goes up, it's one that we can reach to and look at and say, here's where the citizens in Utah County are. We keep that multiplier in place, that 1.65, and then we use the commissioner's salary as the base model for comparison to the rest, so we don't get these movement or swings of, well, now this is down, this one's up, the commissioners like so-and-so, they don't like so-and-so. We try to keep it consistent. And then once the commissioner's salaries have been established through the median income, then we take the rest of the elected officials and they multiply back according to what the commissioner's salary is on kind of a historical basis. And you'll see the assessors at 0.95, the attorneys at 1.15, clerk auditors at 0.95, recorder at 0.95, the sheriff at 1.05, the surveyor at 0.95, and the treasurer at 0.95, which keeps us pretty consistent, across the board. And you can see, the different, how that, the bottom line on this is how they would change and their salaries would adjust in 2021. So that was the methodology. The process that I would like to see, and this is a further discussion for another commission meeting, is that we actually bake this into understanding that we can't hold future commissions, totally in line with it, but at least we can bake it into our what is our process?
County code?
The county is the code.
You could do that.
We could bake it into the county code that every 2 years, we do a look. We would do a look at the median income on this thing and see where it's at, and if it adjusts and goes from 79,000 to 83,000 on a median income basis, then we'd apply the multipliers on this, and it would be one that we'd say it should be reviewed and analyzed based off this criteria, which in my mind seems to be fair and rational as we move forward. And then we can move forward in a progressive way that will allow us to be consistent without pulling a whole bunch of politics into it. So anyway, that was my rationale with bringing this forward and taking a look at it. You'll see that Exhibit A does have the effective date of January 1st, 2022. I talked with Ralph about that because we do have 26 pay periods, and the 26 pay periods, as you're well aware as elected officials, it is from January 1st to December 31st, no matter what. Our pay periods say we have to kind of divide that into, there's no overlapping back and forth on that, although we do see some adjustments here and there that make it so that that calendar year is what we've held to. And we've done that consistently over the years, even with some objection to it. So thoughts?
Well, when I was, to point out an area, when I was talking to the HR director, Ralph, that the multipliers was generated by him based on historical salary data. And was that data specific to the county or through Utah?
That's a great question. So when you talk about the multipliers, are you talking about the increase of the median household wage? Or are you talking about the ratio of elected officials to the commission? I just want to make sure I understand the question.
It would be on the elected official side.
Okay, so the ratios of the elected officials to the commission is supported both through what we have done in the past historically in Utah County, and it's also very similar to what the other larger, the other larger counties have done with their, with their elected officials. They have similar ratios. Now, Commissioner Lee did say that, politically there's issues with how they set their rates, and we don't necessarily want to hang our hat on that. I can say that we're still less than the average of the metro counties. So this is still, I think, a pretty conservative approach, but it's also very defendable in that these ratios are fairly well supported in the marketplace and in what we've done in the past in the county. So does that answer the question?
I think so. What we're trying to avoid is competing with commercial salary ranges for like work, similar work.
Look at that.
Yeah, no, I think this really does set us apart as doing something just for elected officials that only applies to elected
And this
officials.
is elected officials, yes, and for, so the question would be, why now? Many would ask, and it's probably, for me at least, it was that there are some structures that have been languishing for several years, and that's because, like Commissioner Lee pointed out, it's been tied to political interest, and we're trying to avoid that. We want to have it in code so that way whoever is in office, whenever they're in, that they will use this as a standard. It can be changed, yes, but it's less likely to be more, we can avoid cavalier type approaches.
No, I think that's exactly right. I think that's interesting is ever since I've worked at the county, of course, I'm always looking at the marketplace as far as the cost of labor. And immediately I saw that the elected officials in Utah County were significantly less than the others. Now, I know we don't want to necessarily match these other counties, and I can tell you again that some of the larger ones are significantly higher than we are, even with these changes. But it seemed like we were, we were significantly less. And so it comes down to what I really like about the median household earnings is that is wage-based, and it's not based on the cost of living. So it's something that's similar in alignment with what we're trying to do with everyone in the county. And it also moves, follows inflation, but it does not fluctuate like inflation does. So it should be a really good way to measure that and a really, really good way to approach it. I also would say that as we make these adjustments every 2 years, I think it will be relatively easy to say, yes, we're in alignment, and there'll be some years that we don't make a change, because it just isn't supported, and I think that's very fair. That's the one last thing I'd like to say is that, wages for elected officials, I realize there's a lot of thought on why and when and how, and yes, it's been a long time since anything's happened at Utah County. 2015 was the last time there was anything changed in elected officials' salaries. So yes, I think that's the why, is nothing has happened for so long. And it's more about not saying, we have to pay this amount, but we just need to pay a fair amount. What's fair for an elected official, to be in that role? Because, costs have gone up and wages have followed that significantly, especially in Utah County. We're the strongest county in the state, and we're one of the strongest in the nation. So it's hard to say that elected official salaries should not have gone up in the last 7 years.
You and I think, first started to talk about this, I think it was February, maybe March. We were talking about both elected and all the other employees, and we're trying to get them on a market base rather than a COLA.
Correct.
And market base, that way we can at least compare positions to other positions elsewhere and see if we're following or reasonably well without trying to beat them or even match them in some cases.
That's exactly right. Are there any other questions or anything else I can add to this? I would say that what is proposed is very fair, and it's very defensible in my opinion. Again, this isn't going over the top by any means. It's still very very much on the lower side of what we could do. So,
Your thoughts?
I think it makes sense to bring the politics out of it. I think if you look at the history of, commissioners choosing to raise certain elected official salaries and not other elected officials, I like that we have done the historical data to create a formula so that that would become more difficult to do in the future. I like the approach you've taken, Commissioner Lee, in taking the politics out of it. And I think it's important to note that we did not anywhere close to compare the work that we do to the private sector, because we would have to double our wages if we compared it to the private sector. And we didn't even compare it really to other counties because we're still making significantly less than every other urban county in the state. And so I think the way you've chosen to do this by tying it to the median income of our county, and then we as elected officials make less than our neighboring counties because we are a frugal county. I think it makes sense. I think the approach you took, Commissioner Lee, was very logic and reason based and not emotional or political based. And to Commissioner Sakovich's point, it doesn't even tie to the private sector at all. So I think your methodology was very solid, and I like how you took politics out of it so that future sheriffs don't have to reap the unfortunate benefits of past sheriffs. Theoretically, of course.
Of course.
Okay.
Should you read through that list?
So if there is a motion to approve this, I think it is important to approve it that we're following Exhibit A. And
Right.
Exhibit A has everything defined.
Okay,
think
then
that
I
would-
will approve, I will move to approve item number 27 in accordance with Exhibit A.
I think we have are we at, I'm sorry to interrupt the motion. Maybe I should see if we have a second first. I'll try to keep in line with procedure. Is there a second?
There is a second, but we should include that on that second line, the existing salaries of the county officers of Utah County, Utah. It should read existing salaries of the county elected officers of Utah County, Utah.
You're reading off the resolution?
The, yes,
reading off
the resolution, yes. The agenda item says that county officers, there's both elected and appointed county officers.
Yeah, but this one's just dealing with the elected.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Are we good, Rob? Okay.
Okay, so.
Okay,
second motion.
we got a motion and a second to approve and authorize the resolution as stated in number 27 and as stated with the Exhibit A. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passes 3-0.
Commissioner Lee?
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Previously, on the consent, you struck item number 31, which is a closed session for litigation. It now appears that we need that for it's a timeliness issue, that we need to respond to an issue which we can bring up in that closed session. Could you revisit that and consider setting that closed meeting for after our 4 o'clock closed meeting?
I would like to make a motion to reconsider item number 31 and to set a time, date, and location for that meeting to occur immediately after this meeting in this location.
And I will second that motion.
And all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so that is back on. All right. We did strike the work session. Now for general public comment. Cowboy, you're up. I love saying that, Eldon.
Afternoon, Commissioners.
Afternoon.
Eldon A. Neves. Hi, Alice. I wanted to make sure that you were able to do the meeting last week without me here. I apologize.
was
I wasn't
tough.
able. You were okay then. Tomorrow at 1 o'clock, Commissioner Gardner and Commissioner Sakovich and also we're going to have a meeting at the junction of Highway 6 and 89. That's with Burgess Owens and his group and also Stewart people. And we're going to tour the destruction of that Lake Fork area. It's that whole area there. And wanted to invite you to come. 1 o'clock. You know where the shooting range is there at
It's
that.
about a half mile off.
We have a Board of Equalization meeting at 2.
What's that?
We have a Board of Equalization meeting at 2.
Well, you can change that then, right?
Oh, no.
This is important, Commissioner Lee. Come on. You really outgun it? I don't know if we probably can change that. So, and we'd also like to have Glenn, Tanner, and Richard Nielsen there, if they can. Are they either one here or they ran off? Okay, so that's good.
Can
They-
you
they
make
have
sure that
been
we
great,
have
by
the
the way.
information for that?
What's that?
Can you make sure we have the information for that, just in case we're able to swing it?
I'm sure you can change it for me, can't you? Just,
I'm gonna try. That's why I want the
Okay.
information
I think
for
it'd be
your,
really
for your
great
event.
because they're gonna be there to just tour that whole thing. and
I'm gonna
get
see
s-
what I
get
can do
us-
for you, so I need to
get-
make sure I have the details for your
get
event,
lots
so I
of
can
money.
try
And
to
then we're gonna take.
convince these old guys over here to
we're gonna
let me
have-
get out of it.
We're gonna have like they haven't been, the Sons of Guns, they were supposed to fix our road, they haven't done it. Clear in there. But-
You said it in a public meeting 2 weeks ago.
Oh, okay. But we're gonna have some side-by-sides and go clear through the thing. It is unbelievable what's happened there. This will change your life, Commissioner Gardner. Once you see that, you'll become a whole new man, okay? This is gonna be really great if you can come there. Also,
A straight face and tell you. I'm gonna do what I can to be there.
Okay,
I'm gonna see
please.
if I can
yeah.
ditch
it's,
these guys here.
Commissioner Sakovic, it doesn't matter if he's there or not. If you, if you're there, that'll be the main thing. Also, I talked to Commissioner Lee. It's time, really, that we have an old rancher feller on the planning commission. About 5 or 6 years ago, I was on it, and I know that Bryce, he may say no, and also Peggy may say no, but we really do, because right now we have just a bunch of yuppies and developers, right? And I don't know which is worse. So, but if you had some good old guy that
We
could
don't
say,
have anyone like you on the planning commission?
no, we don't.
Well, who in the world has been putting people on the planning commission and not putting people like
I
you?
have no idea, but I need to be there because I say damn and hell and some bitch and all that stuff. And I know how to say that. And I know how to make sure that we try to keep the county a little bit rural. Okay, so Commissioner, it's probably on January. I'll watch for a letter, okay? All right. Thanks a lot. I appreciate your time.
Always
you.
a good time.
Okay, thank you. Bye now.
Commissioner, for the record, we have Robert Mullen on the planning commission, who is
Don't say that. Don't say that. Oh, yeah, fruit farmer. Okay, I thought you saying he was gonna retire.
There
or
is a
something.
fruit farmer
There
on
was
the
an
commission,
opening.
I mean, on the planning commission right
lives in the
now.
county. Yep, he's very good. Probably true.
Thank you for the clarification. I
Sounds like the
appreciate it.
cattle
understand
sheep
that.
wars are back at it again.
Okay, well, thank you. Any other public comments? Seeing none, we will move into our closed meeting. I gotta talk with you. No.
Not you, the cowboy.
The